I would title today's video like this: After the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, orchestrated by Kennedy, the world faced a real threat of nuclear war for the first time. Explosions, strikes, destruction, and casualties have already become statistics, almost something we're used to. But even in this series of military routine events, something can happen that might turn the history of civilization towards self-destruction. Yesterday's strike by Iran on probably the holiest city for all world religions, Jerusalem, the very center where our civilization was born, the cornerstone of humanity, showed that any and all taboos and prohibitions of humanity have been cast aside. The missile was flying not just toward Jewish holy sites, which are also sacred to Christians and Muslims. It struck very close to Al-Aqsa, which is perhaps the second most important and significant symbol of Islam. What is happening now resembles the agony of an enraged and wounded animal that has lost its mind. What Iran is doing doesn't fit into any logical framework, but it looks like convulsions of hatred. We will talk about this. And just so you understand, Iran's actions today are the exact opposite of their goals, if you think about it for a second. Iran is trying to take revenge on everyone, even those who are not involved and never intended to be part of this war. On March 19th, Iran struck the Ras Laffan LNG terminal in Qatar, the Saudi refinery in Yanbu, the American bases Al Minhad and Al Dhafra in the Emirates, and the headquarters of the U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. The United Kingdom, which did not want to get involved in this conflict, was hit at the joint U.S. military base. On March 20th, the new supreme leader of Iran, Mojtaba Khamenei, stated that nuclear negotiations with the U.S. are now off the agenda, since no one is currently proposing it to the supreme leader, who, by the way, we are still not entirely sure is alive and capable. Well, no one has invited him to enter into nuclear negotiations. This mention of nuclear weapons made the world's attention turn in that direction. So the first thing we'll talk about in this video is what Iran might have in mind when they mention, completely out of context, that they have something they won't talk about anymore. This topic is important not only for Israel and the Middle East, but also for a very simple reason. We all live on the same planet, and what happens in one part affects all the others, so it's important for all of us. And how do the people of Iran feel about an attack by Israel or America on their country? And how do the Kurds and Azerbaijanis, who make up 30% of Iran's population, feel about the same thing? We'll talk about that a bit later. And of course, everyone is interested in the question of why 4,500 Marines have been sent from San Diego toward the Strait of Hormuz. We'll try to understand what this means for our wallets and for the continuation of the war in Iran and for the duration of the war in Iran. Let's turn for a moment to Eastern Europe. Day 1486, my God. Day 1486 of the war. Russian troops are conducting offensive operations, still conducting offensive operations. It's been almost 1,500 days already, simultaneously in several directions. On the other hand, the Ukrainian armed forces, on the night of, let's say, I think March 22nd, confirmed damage to two ships of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, the frigate Admiral Essen and Admiral Makarov, as a result of the strike on the Novorossiysk fleet. Both sides gained something, lost something, inflicted damage on the enemy, and suffered painful blows themselves. The height of absurdity was Ukraine receiving the full package of conditions for joining the European Union on March 16th. Besides the fact that joining the European Union itself, in my opinion, is counterproductive for any new state joining it, new, I emphasize, there is also the EU Charter. Hungary demands that 100% of the countries not only vote, but also ratify the accession in their parliaments. Given that Hungary, along with a couple of other EU countries, are not going to vote for Ukraine as EU members. So all of this looks like a PR stunt where everyone smiles, takes pictures, visits each other, has snacks and drinks, fully knowing that nothing will come out of it anyway. The European Union can't even agree on guaranteeing the $95 billion loan to Ukraine, which they've already practically promised. The countries that aren't taking part in dividing up the stolen money, I mean, just don't understand why they should take on such a huge debt in someone else's war. America has already completely moved away from the idea of lending or giving money to Ukraine, but we'll talk about that later as well. The U.S. has stopped cooperating with Europe on Ukrainian regulation in the previous format, and nothing new is happening. On March 20th, at a meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi, Trump compared the strikes on Iran to the attack on Pearl Harbor. Citing the need for an element of surprise, the comparison caused a sharp reaction in Tokyo. Japan receives 94% of its oil from the Middle East through the Strait of Hormuz and is experiencing a severe energy crisis. Trump accused Europe of ingratitude. After demanding that NATO allies send minesweepers to the Strait of Hormuz, most European countries refused. In my view, they're already backing down out of fear. Vice President Vance privately expressed concern about the protracted nature of the Iranian campaign. I also want to express concern about the protracted nature of the Iranian campaign. At the end of today's video, we'll talk with you about the most amusing one. I would say the most unusual story to ever happen in the United States, when a private citizen opened his wallet to save the country. Who he is, what he did, and why, you will find out soon, but I guarantee you will be pleased. So, the leadership of Iran has brought the topic of the atomic bomb to the forefront. Let's figure out what Iran has, how they can scare the rest of the world. The fact that they are ready to bomb any targets. They showed strikes on Al-Aqsa, or rather near Al-Aqsa, but with their strike accuracy, they could easily have hit the mosque as well. So why did they fire at the great shrine of their own religion? To show that they can do anything they want, even things you thought they would never do in a million years. And what else did we think they would never do in a million years? We thought they would never drop an atomic bomb on the territory of Israel, not on Haifa, and especially not on Jerusalem. First, because it's their holy place too, and second, because the radioactive cloud could reach them as well. He just dispersed 35,000 people at demonstrations. He showed that the regime doesn't care how many of their own citizens die as long as they stay in power. Iran now has significant stockpiles of enriched uranium, including material close to weapons grade. At the same time, no one has been able to directly verify the exact numbers for several months. According to the latest estimate, even before inspection stopped in the summer of 2025, Iran had about 440 kilograms of uranium enriched up to 60%. In addition, Iran was accumulating uranium enriched up to 20% in even larger quantities. But the specific figures, again, differ significantly in various estimates. What is meant by that, we have no idea. A significant portion of highly enriched uranium is stored in underground tunnel complexes in the Isfahan area, and this facility was almost unaffected by the U.S. and Israeli strikes in 2025. In 2023, IAEA inspectors detected individual uranium particles enriched up to 83.7% at the Fordo facility, which makes it possible to produce uranium needed for an atomic bomb in a very short time. In other words, the radioactive missile materials that Iran possesses are more than enough to assemble several dirty bombs. A dirty bomb is regular explosives plus scattered radioactive materials without a nuclear explosion. It doesn't require weapons-grade uranium or threshold-level purification. Medical and industrial isotope sources will do. From the perspective of radiation contamination and panic, a dirty bomb with regular industrial sources can be just as effective, and sometimes even more so, than one with expensive weapons-grade enriched uranium. A single dirty bomb only requires a small amount of radioactive material, and Iran already has kilograms of enriched uranium and many other sources of radiation from its nuclear infrastructure. So, what does such a bomb do? A dirty bomb causes a localized explosion and contaminates the area, making evacuation necessary and causing economic damage. It's possible that the number of casualties from the explosion itself won't be that high and won't compare to a real nuclear blast, but the long-term closure of the area and the economic and psychological impact will have a huge effect on the population. A huge impact on the population. From a military point of view, a dirty bomb doesn't change the balance of power, but as a tool of strategic terror against major cities, ports, and financial centers, it will give Iran an additional lever of pressure. That's exactly what they're trying to achieve. By sending missiles to the countries of the Persian Gulf, as well as to the British military base, Iran has informed the world that any targets in any country that is potentially on the side of the United States of America and Israel can also be attacked with dirty bombs. An Iranian source discusses strikes on the banking districts of Frankfurt, the famous city of London, as well as La Défense in Paris. This is also in addition to strikes on Haifa, Tel Aviv, and Jerusalem. By the way, we are incredibly lucky that Iran doesn't have real atomic bombs yet, and that they were literally just months away from enriching uranium to what is called weapon grade. That is, the very one they call a nuclear warhead, to show that they are technically quite capable of sending dirty bombs. With these missiles, Iran mainly targets residential areas in Haifa and Tel Aviv in Israel using cluster bombs. Inside one such bomb or missile, there are many small submunitions, fragmentation, incendiary, and shaped charge. At a certain altitude above the target, the container opens with an ejection charge, as it's called. The submunitions scatter like a carpet. The bomb covers an area up to several football fields in size, creating a dense field of destruction for personnel and unarmored vehicles. Since 2008, there has been an international convention on cluster munitions, which prohibits their development, production, stockpiling, and use. Iran has missiles with a payload capacity of hundreds of kilograms, which are structurally suitable for unconventional warheads. Let's proceed. There. That's what I was talking about, including radiological ones. As we discussed, Iran also has radioactive material, and this enriched uranium can be used as the payload for such bombs and missiles if desired. Iran's goal at the moment is not to attack with dirty bombs, but to let the world know that they have this capability, that they have all the necessary technological means for it, and that if they decide, they will attack anyone who joins in or is thinking about joining the coalition of Israel and America. Trump's response was to immediately send additional to Iran. Why? There may be several options, but first let's deal with another fake story that Bibi Netanyahu and Israel forced Trump to go to war with Iran.
First, I want to say that I'm still alive. I'm alive. And you are all witnesses to that, and I want to finish these opening remarks with another piece of fake news, namely that Israel somehow dragged the United States into a conflict with Iran. Does anyone seriously think that anyone can tell President Trump what to do? Come on, President Trump always makes his decisions based on what he believes is good for America, and I can add that I think it's also good for future generations. In this case, these interests are absolutely clear and our achievements are obvious. People often say that you can't win, you can't make revolutions from the air. That's true. You can't do it just from the air. You can do a lot of things from the air, and we do, but there also has to be a ground component. There are many possibilities for this ground component, and I take the liberty of not sharing all of these possibilities with you.
Mr. President, do you intend to lift sanctions on Iranian oil, and do you plan to deploy more troops to the region?
No, I am not deploying troops anywhere. If I were doing that, I wouldn't tell you, but I'm not moving troops. And I actually thought the numbers would be worse. I thought it would go up more than it did. I wanted to put out that fire, and I said, if I do this, oil prices will go up, the economy will take a bit of a hit. I thought it would be worse, much worse actually. I thought there was a chance it would be much worse. Right now it's not so bad, and soon it will all be over.
Bibi came up with an interesting idea about how to defang Iran. That is, how to make it so that without having to change the regime in Tehran, Iran would stop being a threat to global oil shipments. I'm sure a bunch of idiots will immediately start shouting that Israel started this war on purpose so that oil would go not through Iran but through Israel. I don't even want to start responding to this nonsense, which of course will now be coming from everywhere. Right now, I want you to listen to how Bibi briefly and, in my opinion, brilliantly, He has the same quality as Trump: to explain complicated things in very simple words so that they become completely clear. At the same time, it doesn't matter whether the current leadership is removed or continues to rule their broken, battered country. By the way, just so it's clear, Bibi recently said that we've destroyed 7,000 targets that we plan to destroy, and that we still have 7,000 left. In other words, it will take about 2, maybe 3 more weeks to finish everything that Israel and possibly America plan to do in Iran.
We have achievable goals, and I won't go into detail about all our combat plans with the United States. We are well coordinated with them. I'll say this: as soon as we achieve our goals, then I stated, and I think the Americans understand this very well because we are true partners. I think what we need to do is to consider alternative routes in order to constantly pass through these critical choke points, such as the Hormuz and Bab el-Mandeb Straits. To ensure an uninterrupted flow of oil, just build oil and gas pipelines that go west across the entire Arabian Peninsula, directly to Israel, directly to our Mediterranean ports. And in this way, you will forever eliminate these strategic choke points. This is definitely quite possible, so I see it as a significant change that will happen after this war. But I also foresee that this war will end much faster than many people think. I think that in war you have to grit your teeth. Churchill said that democracies suffer from what he called the slumber of democracy. And they wake up, in his words, they can only wake up when they hear that sharp, alarming gong of danger. That's exactly how he put it. Well, you do hear that piercing, alarming bell of danger. That's when Iran gets nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles. That's not just an alarming bell anymore. That's a real apocalypse. Don't let this happen under any circumstances. Apocalypse. Don't let it happen.
Netanyahu also finished with, in my opinion, an epical statement.
Nuclear weapons. And the function of leaders is to stand and tell people the truth, even when it's inconvenient. That's what needs to be done. And it's not always possible to see the danger in time, but leaders have a special responsibility to recognize the threat in time and take action. And I sincerely hope that over time people will truly appreciate the wisdom and courage of President Trump's decision, his far-sighted leadership, and the fact that we are all working together. America is not fighting for Israel. America is fighting alongside Israel for a common goal, to protect our shared future, to defend civilization from these barbarians.
And I hope no one needs to be convinced that they are barbarians. Now let's move on to where we left off in yesterday's video, namely the shocking and seemingly senseless demands of the U.S. Democratic Party that anyone who filled out a ballot should have the right to vote. Even if 1,000 ballots are filled out by one person, or an undocumented illegal immigrant goes to several different polling stations and votes there. The Democratic Party is fighting for the right to cheat and rig elections, as they say, to the death. And it's quite possible that if they lose, it will be the death of the Democratic Party as we know it today. They are going against the will of their own voters, who, according to all polls, demand that voting be done exclusively by U.S. citizens with proper identification. And they are absolutely ready to disregard the opinion of the entire country, just to survive.
Spring break has started, and passengers are preparing for long security lines as the partial closure of DHS drags on for another busy weekend. Thousands of TSA employees are not showing up for work, and it's expected to cost airlines millions of dollars a day. And this situation is moving in the same direction. To talk more about the high cost of this shutdown, we have Taylor Riggs with us, the host of The Big Money Show. It's a great show. Sometimes I get to sit with you, and Taylor, no one does it better. So let's talk about the economic consequences of this shutdown.
Yes, so far it's not too much because as you can see, the line is so long, the demand is still high. The longer this goes on, the bigger the economic impact will be. I'm not just thinking about my own inconvenience, but what about all those people who are left without a paycheck? They still have to pay rent. They have to pay their bills. So I'm worried about their ability to make payments. And then, of course, when people at home start thinking about spring break, Easter is in 2 weeks.
It doesn't seem like we've gotten any closer to breaking this deadlock.
You know what's interesting? There's a whole group of airports, and San Francisco International Airport is one of them, that are actively participating in the SPP. Basically, this falls under the jurisdiction of the Transportation Security Administration, TSA, in the sense that these private contractors are required to follow the same standards, but at its core, it's a public-private partnership. This is almost like privatizing the TSA, which hasn't happened in a long time. My call is, let's privatize the TSA. It's ridiculous. All of this could remain without funding and be blocked by the Democrats who don't want to support and fund the DHS. We've done the analysis and it can be done. We could try to privatize it. I mean, this isn't a short-term solution. It will take years of debate in Congress to resolve this. But people who are registered in the CLEAR system, even when there's a line at the San Francisco airport, they move quickly because they've brought in private contractors and don't rely solely on the government.
You brought up the topic of privatization. They're angry because they have to make ends meet, and they have to run around looking for a job where they'll get paid.
We've done so much research that now imagine a quarter of families are living paycheck to paycheck.
That was Stephen Miller, the president's national security advisor. But we still haven't discussed why the 2,500 Marines who are already near Iran are being reinforced by another 4,500 of their colleagues. The Marine Corps on amphibious assault ships is a versatile tool. They can carry out special forces raids, seize key islands and facilities, and 2 or 3 expeditionary corps or expeditionary marine groups of 2,000 each give Trump a real opportunity for a limited landing operation, blocking ports and IRGC facilities without a full-scale landing or full-scale occupation of the country. So the first possible target, which we've already talked about, is Kark Island. Capturing it would help America control the oil. One expeditionary group would be enough for this. Another possible direction of attack is Isfahan, where the main stockpiles of enriched uranium are kept. This operation will, of course, require missile strikes, Air Force involvement, suppression of air defenses if they still exist there, a special forces landing, most likely Israeli, and then limited contingents of Marines to secure and remove the material. The difference between this raid and the kind of operation that Israeli Marine paratroopers are trained for is that the facility is located very deep underground and is well protected. It's possible that the U.S. will first try to bomb this facility and destroy it from the air. And only if that doesn't work, then they'll send in the Israelis and then the American landing force to finish dealing with Isfahan. At the same time, I am sure that at this point, such a strike will not be carried out without further provocation from Iran. It's quite possible that the Marines were sent precisely to prevent Iran from attacking Israel or its neighbors with dirty bombs. It's quite possible, and even likely. Most likely, this is a warning, but as they say, we're keeping our powder dry. If necessary, we'll step up and go on the attack. In Iran, the population overwhelmingly supports and helps Israel. They report on the locations of the launchers of the Corps, provide coordinates, and inform about any troop movements. That is, the vast majority of the country's population enthusiastically welcomes the liberators who have come from America and Israel. They finally have hope that the nightmare tyranny of the crazed mullahs will one day be overthrown.
Iranians are passing on a lot of intelligence simply by driving past places where Basij have been spotted, photos, addresses. I was driving down this road and saw them gathering under this bridge, or I saw them gathering at this local school, hospital, or gym. And other news agencies outside the country are reporting this, giving the exact times, dates, and addresses. If the war stopped today, the only thing it would achieve is a short-term delay. It would also make things worse. It would reinforce the Iranian authorities' determination and commitment to achieving their stated goals of destroying Israel and the United States. This has not changed, and there are still many influential people who have the means and the will to achieve these goals.
Now we have heard the opinion of the Iranians. They dream that the American-Israeli forces will overthrow the regime, that the regime will disappear, vanish from their lives. On the border with Iraq, the population of the Kurdish regions has long dreamed of independence, and they also want to use this moment to achieve their goals. Many residents of Tehran and other large cities fled to the Kurdish regions after the executions were shown. Yesterday, they celebrated the new year, and hundreds of thousands who found themselves in northern Iran prayed that America would finish what they themselves could not do.
I'm afraid, yes. Well, let me give you a chance to listen to how Persians celebrate the new year. We are here in the mountains of northern Kurdistan in a place called Acre, and I'll pause for a second so you can hear the fireworks. And what you see down there, those yellow lights, are people carrying torches with fire. And for Persians, this is symbolism that combines the symbol of fire, the symbol of renewal, and of course, the idea of freedom. They light this torch, hoping and praying for freedom and prosperity in the new year. This is exactly what the Iranians I've spoken to here, those who have led the movement over the past 3 months, are seeking, and what they hope for and pray for, truly pray for. That the United States does not give up, that the United States does not loosen its grip, that President Trump does not weaken. So this is an epic scene. We had to climb this mountain. It's pouring rain, as you can see, but there are hundreds of thousands of people here right along this mountain cascade. It's very cloudy because we're very high up, but it's absolutely dramatic. And people, again, as you can see, those yellow lights, I'm not sure if you can see them, Lori, but all those yellow lights, come a little closer, Hunter, but you can see right there all of that, real fires, men and women, hundreds of men and women holding lit torches. And again, the whole idea is that when they celebrate Nowruz, the beginning of the new year, they hope that this freedom, this spirit of freedom will spread throughout the country, throughout the nation, into Iran. And that one day they will have a chance to be truly free. And that one day they'll have a chance to be.
Well, now let's talk, as I promised, about an American who opened his wallet to help the country. As many of you probably know, the Democrats in Congress are not approving the budget, which means that for the unapproved parts of the budget, the Treasury Department does not have the right to transfer funds. The Democrats decided, at a time when we are at war, and with a country that is known to be involved in financing, at this moment, the Democrats are not allowing the budget to be approved, which means they are not allowing salaries to be paid to the people who check what is being brought into the country at the border. As you understand, the administration cannot just let anyone into the country, bringing in anything they want. In other words, either people have to be forced to work for free, or border checks have to be stopped or slowed down dramatically. Some employees agreed to work with the understanding that they would be paid later once the budget is approved. Some can't afford to do that and can't work. They don't go to work, but try to earn money in some other way, for example, by working as Uber drivers. We understand that this just can't go on for long. Trump even said that he might bring in the army or federal police to perform the duties of those whom the Democrats are not allowing to be paid. But an ordinary American miracle happened. Let's take a look.
The most amazing news of this early morning is a post by Elon Musk. That very man, the billionaire who wanted to get rid of government spending, now says he will pay the salaries of TSA employees during the government shutdown.
So what have we learned today? Disregarding their religious beliefs, their faith, and what the God they call Allah told them, the Iranian leadership is ready to destroy anything, any sacred sites, any number of people just to stay in power. And in this, as we have found out, they are no different from the leadership of the Democratic Party of the United States of America, who are ready to deceive, steal, and are not above political assassinations, as we have seen, in their attempts to remove Trump. Why? For what purpose? And how are they different from the leadership of Ukraine? How are they different from the Kremlin's killers? What they have in common is absolute indifference and disregard for us, for our pain, our problems, our hopes, and our lives, and, of course, for the lives of our children. Well, as you understand, I hope. So, whether aggressive scoundrels seize power with weapons or through intrigues or religious means, or they cheat in elections, killing their political opponents in the process, as was often done in Latin America, in places like Mexico, Venezuela, and honestly in all other countries as well. That's why I believe we need to hold on with both hands to the unique things that America, the United States of America, has given us. And the first real president in my life who doesn't play on the team of the servants of the people, but plays for me. By the way, who hasn't subscribed yet, ladies and gentlemen? Please subscribe, and it's very important, click the bell. I've already explained that this is an indication for His Majesty the algorithm of how much our videos should be promoted, how important and interesting they are to those who watch them. Thank you in advance for clicking the bell, but if you've already done it once in the past, then there's absolutely no need to do it again now. As of today, with Iran, we don't know what will happen or how quickly it will happen. The help from the population is very useful, but as the Israelis said, they still need to strike about 7,000 more targets to accomplish their objectives. I don't know what will happen after that, but it seems very likely that Iran's military-industrial complex will be almost completely destroyed. Under the previous Ayatollah, I was almost certain that a nuclear bomb would not be used. But the current damaged, hateful, terrified homosexual, who lives in constant fear of being exposed, might demand something that the old leadership would never have done. Of course, that would give America and the rest of the world the moral grounds to crush them like bugs. I think that very soon we will land on Kark Island and begin attacking the coastal fortifications of the Iranian army, where the launchers that fire at ships are located. I think that in the next 2 weeks, several countries, including China, will send their warships to Hormuz to help their soldiers and their own oil tankers pass through the dangerous area. I also think that Israel, America, and a number of other countries, let's say, have started thinking about an alternative way to deliver oil. And what Netanyahu is proposing may get support. There are already 2 small oil pipelines, but they were built for different volumes and don't solve the whole problem. The oil pipeline that Netanyahu is proposing will certainly solve this problem. But if the leadership in Iran changes and normal people come to power again, then building a bypass around Hormuz won't be necessary. Regarding our internal affairs, unfortunately, the voting law will not pass for now. But the fact that the Democrats are resisting this so much will help the Republicans fight against their representatives in Congress and the Senate. I mean the representatives who will run for Congress and the Senate. It is quite possible that this will help the Republicans keep both Congress and the Senate in their hands. After that, efforts to pass the bill will resume. That's basically it. Let's wish for clear skies over Israel and Ukraine, and let's hope for as many accurate strikes as possible on military targets in Iran. And still, let's at least hope a little that the bill called Save America will somehow, by some miraculous, magical way, pass. It will end up, as they say, on the president's desk, and Trump will sign it, and it will become the law of our country. That's all. Goodbye.